Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Chief Audit Executive Briefing. Hey, wanted to give you a little update and a big thank you to all of you that actually filled out the Chief Audit Executive survey. So I sent out about 3 or 4 weeks ago a request to provide some information about some of the challenges and opportunities that you see for 2020. So actually my team is going through the information right now. But one of the things that we saw very, very quickly is a lot of you are challenged with the lack of budget and resources. And so while we're still analyzing the rest of the survey and I get you those results, I want to take some time and actually address a few of these items related to some of the pressure that many of you feel for having a lack of budget and a lack of resources. So today I want to, and like I said, this is going to be over the course of a few weeks. And in fact, I'm actually going to put together a resource that I will get out to you here probably within the next month or less that goes into this in more depth and actually gives you some practical things that you can start doing today to get more resource and budget for what you need. So the first thing that I want to talk about today is that budgets are not set in stone. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. Budgets are estimates that your accountants need so that they can estimate the cash inflows and cash outflows in your organization. Okay, so there's a very good business reason for them, but budgets are not real numbers. They are an estimate, and you don't end up ever coming in exactly on budget. It's usually under or over, depending on how things actually change. And those numbers will change and should change over the year. So one of the mistakes that some companies make is they set a budget and then they do not deviate from it. Now, the world is changing around you and there's new opportunities, there's new threats that come along. And so you're constantly needing to every month, every quarter, actually kind of refine those budgets and do a different forecast. Now, I'll tell you a story. I was talking with one executive and he actually made a comment about, well, you know, my budget was actually set in July of last year for the whole of 2020. And I'm sitting here thinking, now, just a minute. We are in January of 2020. And so you're telling me that for 18 months, you have a static budget? That's not right. Okay. That's just not how you do it. If that's the way you're doing it and that's what you're trying to stick to, I'm guessing you're probably also not doing risk-based auditing. You're doing like an 18-month plan and then you're just doing that. That doesn't make any sense, okay? So in this first video, like I said, I wanna share with you a few things, and then we're gonna get into some more detail, and even at the end of this, I'm gonna give you a couple of tips. Now, I wanna share another story with you about budgets. So a lot of accountants do believe budgets are written in stone. And so one of the places where I was chief audit executive, we had an accountant who would call me every single month. And when I looked down at the phone and I could see it was her name, sometimes I just let it go to voicemail because it was the same discussion every month. And it went like this. In our budgeting process, we had obviously line item budget items, but there were certain things I knew I was going to spend over the year. I just didn't know which month they were going to be in. So in our budgeting software, let's say I was assuming, I was going to spend $48,000, let's say, on something, or about $50,000 on something during the year. But I didn't know which month that was going to be in. If I knew which month, I would budget the $50,000 for that particular month. If I didn't, then it just automatically spread that 50,000 out over each of the 12 months. So again, we'll use 48,000 because that goes into 12 to 4,000. So in my budget every month, I had a $4,000 line expense for this particular item. Okay. And each month, the person from accounting would call me and say, Jason, how come you are under budget on this line? And I would say, well, this is a $48,000 expense. I don't know which month I'm going to spend it in, and I haven't spent it yet. And so, oh, okay. The next month, she would call back again. How come you're under budget in this particular line item? And I would explain the same thing again. I don't know exactly which month I'm going to spend it in, but I'm going to spend this in the year. Probably 6 months into it, I actually spend the $48,000. And now she calls me and says, Jason, why are you over budget on this particular item? Again, each month I would have to explain, I knew I was going to spend $48,000 over the year. I didn't know which month. It happened to be the middle of the year, which means on a monthly basis, I'm over budget. At the end of the year, it's going to be fine. Okay. Now, a lot of accountants don't understand that, but you guys should as executives. Think about, and so here's one of the tips is focus on the total of your budget, not the separate line items, and not the month by month, but the total. Because again, at the executive level, let's say if you have a $2 million budget and I'm the CEO or the CFO, I'm going to trust that you are going to stay within your total $2 million budget. It may vary a little bit from line item to line item, but I'm guessing it's going to be there. So again, if you maybe, overestimated in professional services, but you need more training, well, you move effectively some of that money from professional services into training or the other way around. So don't look at it and say, oh, I don't have the training budget for it. First, look at your total budget and see what you can move around within your total budget. We'll go on and talk more about in future briefings about how to calculate ROI. And let's say you need more money. So instead of the 2 million, something else has come up and you need an extra $250,000 this year. Well, then we'll talk about how you go back to the CFO and CEO and board and make that pitch on why you need that extra money. But that's going to be a little bit more in depth. So we'll talk about that in another video. So again, focus on the totals, not necessarily the individual line items, and also realize that when things change, your budget is going to need to change. Okay, so that's the first one for this episode, because like I said, I'm going to get into more detail on this, but I first wanted to set that stage that you all realize budgets are fake numbers. They're just estimates to try to help you stay within a particular budget for the cash flow purposes of your organization. You may be a little over, you may be a little under. It's okay. They're not set in stone. Okay, so that's all I have for this week. I will talk to you next week. Have a great rest of your week.